Say again.
I wanted to poison you, and I didn't care about other people.
Let me bring in an added guest, Jeff Lax. You know him well. He's been on our show, law professor. Jeff, I want to ask you this one question in two parts. 1A, okay? How manipulative do you have to be to engage in these kind of tactics to lure these young women in their dorm rooms and force them into confessing to poisoning, into prostitution, into doing horrible things, 1A. And 1B, could it be he's so manipulative that stretcher scene that Adam Classfield from our network filmed yesterday, taking him out of court, was made up by him?
It's very interesting that you asked that question, because the first thing that I thought about when I saw that development was Harvey Weinstein. And you talk about manipulation, and you talk about, someone with a God complex. That's the kind of thing that I thought of. And Harvey Weinstein also tried to get out of being extradited to California with his medical ailments, which were real ailments, but you don't get out of being extradited if you can be treated in a different state. And that's what everyone, yes, very manipulative, very much a God complex. It's very hard to watch, obviously, those kind of videos. I mean, it's really hard to watch that. But yeah, obviously very manipulative, and obviously he's creating the case against them by videoing all this.
All right.
Denman, which is what appears Dr. Fagan did in this case.
And this note,
Professor Jeff Lax, how's she doing?
Well, I thought before we went to break, she made a huge error. I think the defense has been playing almost a perfect game the entire trial, but I thought she led this expert witness into a terrible line of questioning when she basically asked the witness for a legal opinion. Why would Dr. Husel give this medication? And you knew what he was going to say, to make the patient stop breathing. So that was a rare slip up, I thought, by the defense. But I think she's found her feet since then, and is now challenging the doctor on several other statements he's made about waiting 24 hours and several other things in terms of how Dr. Husel handled these particular patients.
And Neil Rockine.
point of the next shift, still getting
Professor
fentanyl.
Lax, what points is Diane Menashe making with this expert, including especially with Mr. Timmons, who'd been lying on the floor with a drug overdose for 48 hours?
I think she's making a number of points. I think she's trying to show, first of all, that the dosage was being monitored very closely by Dr. Husel. It wasn't just this exponential increase in fentanyl. And I think that's what you just saw her get corroboration from this doctor, although he's trying to now say that it was a different doctor that administered that lower dosage of fentanyl, which is interesting. I don't know whether that's true or not, but she's trying to show what I think we've seen other testimony from other doctors in this case say, that each case is an individual situation, and you can't make a determination just from looking at the dosage alone or the situation from the outside alone. So I think she's scoring a lot of points on this type of questioning of the expert.
Neil Rader, many hats. Joni, welcome back to the show. Here, Diane Menashe is talking about people coding and having a cardiac arrest. That's not just a heart attack. That means they had actually died and were brought back to life, doesn't it?
Yes.
I think you're muted.
Oops. No?
Okay, Joni?
Yes.
Okay, you know what? I'm going to ask the same question to Jeff while we work this out. Jeff Lax, Professor Lax.
Yes, definitely. And I thought you made such a sympathetic point before the break, which is, who do you want treating your family member? An expert witness like this or someone like Dr. Husel? I mean, the point being made here by the defense is these people are coming in with severe medical problems, not little medical problems. And Dr. Husel wasn't the one who ultimately killed them. The Dr. Husel was actually trying to help them in consultation with the family in almost every case. And there's not a person on earth who will not sympathize with what you said before the commercial, that they've had a family member in a medical facility, a hospital, having to deal with difficult situations like this. And I thought that was very compelling.
I think the jury is going to take their own personal experiences, as they always do.
A patient, something that would lessen that sensation.
So, and Jeff Lax, it appeared to me when I was listening to all this, all these patients, if you remove the ventilator, they were going to die. The question is, would they die of their causes within a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, or could you let them just sit there for 10 days and feel like they were suffocating to death? But in this country, we do give drugs when we know patients, as one witness said, pulled the plug, which it's hard to think of, but that's what they were doing on the life support. Jeff?
Very hard to think of. And not only do you have the compassionate side to this and the sympathetic side to this, but you saw the defense attorney there point to the document that the hospital actually uses that basically codifies this. That's practice. That palliative care, yes, that is one of the reasons we do give fentanyl and those types of drugs. And then the nurse testified to that, saying we didn't want the person to feel themselves. They were dying anyway. We didn't want them to feel themselves choking to death. I mean, this is so hard, obviously, to watch this kind of stuff, but they're making the point, and it is very, very compelling.
Yeah, and let's let him look at, because it's so hard on the person who's dying, but always who is left are the family members. Let's listen to Geraldine Brown,
Who gets to make the decision to do that?
And Jeff Lax, here there was indications that the families all agreed for the end of life withdrawal of life support. That in many cases there were chaplains there, but there was no policy as to the upper limits that you could give. Does that inure to the benefit of the prosecution or the defense?
The defense is using that, I think, to make the strong case that every case is individual, and that because there is no one standard amount of fentanyl or palliative care treatment, that each case has to be judged on its own accord, and that and they even showed you documents that you can give greater amounts depending on the palliative situation. And I just want to make one more small point here, and that is that, I think the opinions this medical expert is giving are bordering on legal opinions and conclusions. I'm a little surprised that the defense wasn't objecting to some of the comments we just saw, because frankly, a couple of them really came very close to bordering on a legal conclusion. The doctor had the intent to kill this. He actually said that at one point, had the intent to hasten the end of the life of this patient. Now, you could say it's a medical opinion, but man, I would at least object to that it's also a legal conclusion.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jeff. I think that the defense, though, may have filed motions on that and they had been ruled on. I'm not sure, but that's something that you bring up a good point that we should check on, obviously. Anyhow, we're going to take a break. Okay, Jeff, I just want to get your final thoughts on that, because Husel's live and I want to jump into that. But what are your final thoughts on this argument with Mr. Pryor?
Well, you can't say the grand jury is impartial. This has to be done on a juror by juror basis. So it's silly. You have to do an analysis of each juror and how they were impartial. So it's a lackluster argument. It's not going to be successful, or I'd be shocked if it was. And I know I have a very little time here, so I'll leave it at that.
Okay, you know what? Both of you are great, but let's go now back into the Husel trial, where Diane Menashe is continuing her cross-examination of what I believe would be the